You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Shawn Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. Ivan, please go ahead and introduce today's guest.
Hi, I'm Ivan Zach, and I'm super excited today to introduce you to Dr. David Bruyette. We're going to talk about revolution in lymphoma treatment. On the business side of things, Dave is Chief Medical Officer at Anivive Life Sciences, a real cool company that I just got to learn something about, and he's here. He's the president and CEO of Veterinary Diagnostic Investigation and Consultation. He's on the medical advisory board of Trupanion. He's on the medical board for Veterinary Centers of America. He's a founding member of Los Angeles Zoo, and he's a DVM from University of Missouri, Columbia. It doesn't say here about you being a chief medical officer and director of West LA Animal Hospital. That's where I met you. And that's because I was super scared. It was early days of SmartFlow. And as soon as I met you, I think the first word was F-bomb. And I thought, oh God, he's a normal guy.
It's not gotten any better, Ivan.
I heard. So on the personal side, what we know about Dave is that he enjoyed whitewater rafting in Patagonia. He has a reputation for having a great sense of humor, confirmed. His favorite baseball team are the Los Angeles Dodgers, who just won the World Series. His favorite quote is, "The secret in caring for the patient is to care for the patient." Very interesting. I'm super excited. I think that's the last time I've seen you was in West LA, and there's so much cool stuff you've been doing since. And I only heard about it from other people, so I'm super happy to hear from you directly today. So welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you guys for having me.
Tell us about this. I know that we talked to Chad and we were talking about, what you guys are doing. There's so many directions, but what I know is that there is close to 700,000 cases of lymphoma annually in North America alone.
Yeah, just in North America. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So this is a huge problem. There's, certain protocols of chemotherapy that are used right now and everything that comes with it and, and how it has to be handled and everything. So what are you doing in this field? Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, thanks. I mean, as Chief Medical Officer of Anivive, our goal is really to bring therapeutics to the market for dogs and cats that meet a truly unmet need. We're not interested in the flea, tick, heartworm world. Not that they're not important, but that's just something that we don't really want to get involved in that space. And when you look at unmet needs, we think that oncology is probably one of the larger ones. You're looking at number one cause of death in dogs is related to cancer. Number one or number two cause of death in cats is related to cancer. And when you look within the cancer space, lymphoma is the most common cancer that occurs. And lymphoma in dogs is, unfortunately, like you said, over 700,000 cases just in North America. And, it occurs with a frequency that I think most people don't understand. And it's 10 times more common in dogs than it is in people.
Whoa.
And I think everyone has heard of lymphoma in humans, but they tend not to really recognize it in dogs. One of the things that happens is that, at the time of a diagnosis, most dogs, if not all dogs, are diagnosed by their general practice vet. And then at that point, several things could happen. They could be referred to an oncologist, or they may decline referral to an oncologist, either because of distance or convenience, or they're worried about side effects specifically related to the treatment. And there's really been no substantive change in how we treat lymphoma in dogs for the past 40 years. We all look at the same CHOP protocol, the cyclic chemotherapy, non-selective cytotoxic drugs, and really haven't moved the needle on making things any better for pet owners or for dogs. So one of the things we wanted to look at was, and we use a software platform to help us find new drugs. And so we wanted to we want a drug for lymphoma. We want it to be targeted so that side effects are going to be minimal. We want it to be something that can be convenient for an owner. So we don't want it to be intravenous. We want to have it so that we know that efficacy is going to be likely, because we know that the same target for this drug is going to be active both in humans and in dogs. And that's how we ended up with our drug, which is Verdinexor. And Verdinexor, we worked with our partners at Karyopharm. They're a human pharmaceutical company. They got the sister compound approved for use in humans for multiple myeloma last year and for B-cell lymphoma this year. And on the veterinary side, we just received our last sort of approval letter from the FDA.
Wow.
We're waiting now. We're in this administrative period where they wait to give you your marketing authorization, but that should happen by the end of the year. So we're getting ready now to ramp up with Chad to work on commercializing and marketing Laverdia in January.
It's so interesting, Dave. And yeah, welcome to the show. One of the things that always sticks in the back of my head is how did this happen? Obviously you've been in the industry for a little while, but
Right.
what was the circumstance around this discovery?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of a perfect storm, right? I mean, you're kind of in the right place at the right time. And also, there's a bit of luck involved in all these things. But when we were looking for a lymphoma drug in particular, we had identified another compound that we were going to advance towards approval. And then our platform showed us, well, there's this drug that Karyopharm is working on that fulfills more of the things you guys are interested in. And we reached out to them. They've been a great partner all along. We've been able to leverage a lot of the work that they did on the molecule for human approval to help facilitate and speed up our veterinary approval. So, everyone talks about One Health and what One Health does and what it doesn't do, but this really was an example of working together, both the human company and a vet company, to get products approved for both species.
I know that you kind of explained it, but I want to hear it again. Because to me, what I heard, you said we use software to create a drug, and we wanted it not to be injectable, not to be chemotherapy. And then, you just listed all of those qualities that you want. And then we used the software to find it. To me, it sounded like you Googled it or something. And with all the qualities, like, oh, here's the drug.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that easy. Like, what do you mean? Like, and what's in your biography? Because, I'm a vet. What in your career was in addition to veterinary that you were so deep in the pharmacology, and then that you came up with the idea to research this further and bump up, into this pharma company and then use software to get there? I need more detail because this is complex.
Really, how this all came about was that I was introduced to the company via our CEO, Dylan Balls, and Dylan had reached out to me on a totally unrelated issue related to obesity and diabetes, where I feel a lot more comfortable dealing with those topics. And the question sort of came up, well, maybe there's a better way to find drugs. And his background was in finance, and he was definitely very savvy in the business world. And we started looking at, okay, well, how do we find these drugs? Do we just do a Google search? I mean, that can't be very effective. So it ends up that we were both smart enough to realize we need to hire smarter people than us. And so if you look at our company right now, of the 30 folks who are at Anivive, half of them are software engineers. And Cody Arbuckle is our head of software, our IT chief technology officer. He's got a PhD in stuff that I don't even understand. So it was him that really put together the software platform. He came to us and said, well, what do you want it to do? And then he went off and built it.
Wow. I'm going to drill more into it.
Yeah.
In your veterinary experience, like how do you're internal medicine specialist, like you're board in internal medicine, and then you ran a hospital. I mean, that's a given. And then that deep knowledge of pharmacology aspect of it.
Well, I had another foray into this a while back. So when I finished my residency, I was fortunate enough to work in the Department of Comparative Medicine at Stanford.
Wow.
And there I met a veterinary, a pathologist, PhD, Bill Rule. And Bill introduced me to this world of, there's other things outside of clinical practice that you can look at. And we actually were part of a startup company on the veterinary space, a veterinary pharmaceutical company, that we developed a drug, got it approved for use in dogs. And then that company was sold to what was then Pfizer Animal Health. So back in my background before the West LA days, I had exposure to this part of the veterinary industry, and I was fascinated by it, but I got pulled back into the clinical realm.
You got the truth out of him.
Exactly.
I mean, we talk a lot here about, burnout in the industry and how people are locked into what they're doing. And people like you, this is incredible. I mean, you're a vet, you're boarded. And my thing about specialties and boarded specialists is I'm scared of that. When I graduated, I wanted to be a radiologist, and I didn't become that. And like 4 years into practice, I started regretting it because all your classmates are now becoming boarded, right? It's like that 4 or 5 year window.
Yeah.
And I felt terrible because I was like, everybody's advancing their career. And then later, what I heard from some of my colleagues and classmates is that instead of opening up the funnel of opportunity, they kind of closed it because they now realize like internal medicine is a wide, range of things that you can probably do. But then, if you're a surgeon, you cut and,
Right.
and you get paid a lot. And then if you start hating it for one reason or another, then you're kind of stuck because your pay rate is really high. So you have to match what you do with where you at. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, stories like yours really open up the opportunity and thinking about where the profession can go and what can you do with it. I mean, you can be in so many different areas. So I really, really, appreciate your story. But back to your product. I mean, to me, it sounds like you just made a pill for lymphoma, right? That's as easy as that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
So instead of chemotherapy, animals that are suffering, you just decided, oh, we should have a better drug, and now we do have a pill for lymphoma. Is it cure? Is it gonna put them in remission? What are all those qualities of this drug?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is nothing cures lymphoma. It's largely 100% fatal disease. Unless you're in a situation where you can have a bone marrow transplant for your pet, it's really not something that we're going to cure. And again, that standard of care that we've always done, to your point, with the oncologist, is that everyone's focused on this CHOP multi-agent protocol. And the problem is that all dogs relapse on CHOP. So what we're really looking at with Verdinexor is that we're not looking to replace CHOP. That really wasn't the goal. The goal was, look, if 770,000 dogs get lymphoma, of the 150,000 that get CHOP, those are all candidates for Verdinexor as well, because eventually those dogs will go through CHOP and fail. They'll need something to rescue them. That's where we see Verdinexor. And then you've got this other 550,000 dogs that don't get anything, that the owners or the vets just say, here, we're not going to pursue any further treatment. They take them home for a week or two, the disease progresses, and then they euthanize them. So we wanted to have something that would offer an approach so that more dogs could get treated rather than euthanized as a result of the diagnosis.
This is fascinating. I mean, I'm just thinking also from sort of commercialization and marketing of this thing. It's really is, sounds like as simple as instead of, do you want chemo or do you want just a pill? It's like it's like that Matrix moment where they offer you, a pill. And I mean, this is incredible. I keep thinking if you could Google this and make a pill for lymphoma, can you do that for COVID as well? I mean, this is a problem now as well. So is that something that you're working on?
Yeah, that's another story we can talk about. But we are developing.
So you're there too. Okay.
We do have an IND with the FDA. We are working towards starting a human phase 1 trial for a different drug to treat COVID-19. So,
oh my God,
it's all the same stuff. I mean, a cat coronavirus, which is the drug that we are working on, ends up being quite active against SARS-CoV-2. So, it's just another example of, you shouldn't get pigeonholed, to your point, down these funnels. And the good thing that I've always been fortunate with is that at all stages in my life, I've never been bored, because if I ever started to get bored or think about doing something else, I just went and did it. And, I think one thing that's very important for folks as they go through their career is that you're going to get approached by people who come to you with really interesting, bizarre, crazy ass ideas. You should listen to all of them, because somewhere in there is going to be something that actually could be quite impactful and provide you with something that's going to be really fulfilling. There's going to be a bunch of stuff that's going to be terrible, and you're going to hopefully not embark down too many of the wrong paths, but you never know what path to go down if you don't say yes. So, I think keeping your mind open, and being a veterinarian is a great thing, because you have so many facets of what we do as vets interact with what people do on the industry side, on the business side, on the medical side, that veterinarians can kind of sit at the center of a lot of these decisions. And I think that's what keeps you happy and fulfilled and wanting to do more exciting things.
That's so cool. I mean, this is just, what a message to people that are thinking about how burned out they are. And I mean, this is really cool. I actually recently did a study on the burnout in our domain, and, and just, we are burned out. That's what it turns out.
Yeah, we are burned out. And you look at, suicide rates and things like that, it's a devastating problem in the profession, but it's going to have to be something that the profession's going to have to not just recognize, but we're going to have to fix it.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm looking at the angle from, from, can we do it from the business business side, not tell veterinarians you have to be resilient, you have, calm down. We need to
Right,
do something about it. So it's
right.
incredible. And when you're talking about using software to create a medication and really research, the how they impact the systems. I was just recently fascinated reading about the flow states and things like that. And then you're talking about the intersection of neuroscience, the psychology, the pharmacology, and technology. And what I found it like they said this, and I really thought about this, how now pharmacology, and we can use these crazy computers and software now to actually, bring the modality of genomes and all this stuff, DNA, and then it's really merging the technology with pharmacology. And you're really representing that. You're using
Mhm.
software to build the drugs that are attacking, cells on a completely different level.
Yeah, and I think that we have to have an eye to what the profession really wants, and what pet owners really need. Because for me, in the oncology space with lymphoma in general, what we didn't want to do is develop a drug that was so targeted that it would restrict its use. For instance, like if it only is effective against naive T cell, well, that's great if you have a naive T cell dog. But a lot of pet owners and vets never take the diagnosis of lymphoma past the diagnosis of lymphoma. So you're automatically limiting the number of pets that could potentially benefit from your drug. So we want it to be targeted in that the drug interacts more with abnormal cells than normal cells. So that's what makes it safer. But we wanted something that would also be effective against all types of lymphoma. And our claim that was approved by the FDA is for the treatment of lymphoma in dogs. So, with a broad claim that lets veterinarians, have lots of different opportunities on how they're going to use this drug.
That's so fascinating. So, Dave, what's next? What does the next year look like? When could pet parents be having this drug administered to their animals?
Yeah, well, it looks like in the first quarter of next year, we'll be shipping drug, to veterinary clinics. We're building up our marketing and commercial team, our education team to educate the vets. We have an incredible group of KOLs in the veterinary oncology space who are going to help direct us, so that we can make the specialists aware of what we're doing. And then that'll filter down to the internists and the criticalists and then the general practitioners. So that's really we're going to be focused on for Verdinexor, heavily in the first part of next year. And then we have other things in the pipeline as well that will also be moving into development. And hopefully also with respect to a vaccine for Valley fever, we should hopefully have an approval for that next year as well.
Wow.
That's absolutely amazing. It seems like you probably sleep a lot.
Yeah. And to Ivan's point, I don't have an 8-month old, but I have a 3 and a 2-year old. And so, no, there's not a whole lot of sleep going on. So,
That's amazing.
although they love COVID because their parents are at home a lot. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's really, really interesting. So we have listeners all over the world. If they want to find out more information about the work that you guys are doing, how do they do that?
yeah, the easiest would be to go to anivive.com. So, anivive.com. We think the website's really exciting now, but the website will look really amazing here in another 4 to 6 weeks as we get ready to launch. And we'll have lots of information on that site. So anything that they have questions about, they can feel free to reach out to me at any point, or they can contact us through the website.
Dave, I'd hate to do this to you, but we just burn through time here like
Perfect.
nobody's business.
No problem.
We're already at the time. It's been a really high energy, awesome conversation and really exciting stuff. We
Good.
like to end every episode the same way. So we've got a couple questions for you. The
Sure.
first is, a guy like you that starts off in the first VCA hospital ever and ends up, curing cancer in dogs or helping cure cancer in dogs.
We're not curing cancer in dogs. We're not, in case there's anybody listening from regulatory agencies.
Can you walk on water?
No, I don't like
By the way,
water.
the next project we're doing is
Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
So someone like you must have, read some inspiring things or, things that have kind of pushed you through your career. So we always ask, like, is there a TED Talk, a book, anything that you've stumbled across that you'd highly recommend to our listeners?
I think the one book, I read a lot of books. I enjoy reading books. I don't, and not medical books so much as other things. The one book I go back to repeatedly is Team Arrivals, book about Abraham Lincoln and how he negotiated his cabinet and how he interacted with his rivals to turn them into colleagues. And I think that has really helped me a lot. And how I interact with people, and really how I understand or try to understand people who have different viewpoints than my own. You don't have to agree with everyone to work with everyone. So, that book I think it's excellent.
I need to read that book. I need to learn how to work with Shawn, so that would be helpful.
Yeah,
Um,
it seems like that's probably hopeless. So you should just split up and start over.
we got a winner. You're getting a Starbucks card. All right. With that, there's a second question that we ask at the end. Is there someone that you can recommend in the industry who is an innovator and would be cool to invite to this podcast?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously there's a lot, and as a personal plug, I guess, shameless plug, I just came out with I'm the editor of a new internal medicine textbook, and we've got 160 authors, but one of the chapters in the book I think for me was just eye-opening, and that was Robin Downing, veterinarian in Colorado. She has so many initials behind her name, I can't possibly go through them all, but pain management, palliative care, all kinds of things. But Robin is amazing to talk to, an amazing speaker, with her thoughts regarding how we can do a better job treating patients, what we do at end of life, how we can make that easier for both the pet owner and the pet. It's really inspirational, and I would really encourage you guys to chat with her.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.